What is the current status in Jakarta? What is the sentiment like, and what are the recommendations that are going out to the public? And how is that affecting you at the university?
In Jakarta, the university closed down, and we are going to be 100% in this mid semester. Up to next semester will be 100% online.
Wow.
And the decision of the president of the university, we are also have to guard ourselves and to reduce all the activities outside. So that's why we are only limited person coming here, the presenter, and also some people that have important things to do in their works.
Yes.
Could do in university. So university is not empty. We are nationally have like national warning for the COVID-19.
Yeah.
So, nationally.
Okay. Thank you for that update. Yes, we are also in a situation where universities and high schools, and correct me if I'm wrong, are being recommended or ordered to have their education online. Yeah, it's a very particular type of situation. I would like to, even though we had just a little break, for us in our respective rooms, Jakarta and here in Härnösand, to have a few minutes just with your neighbor, the person sitting next to you. Like, what are some of the maybe like unanswered questions, or something that you are still wanting to raise, like important themes or issues, or specific questions that you would like to bring to this conversation? We have about 50 minutes to talk to each other in Jakarta, Härnösand. So what are the questions that you would like to pose to each other? And we'll do a round of questions to each other. So take like 3 minutes first, just with the person sitting next to you, and then we'll pass around the mic and sit in front of the computer there in Jakarta and have a conversation like that. Welcome back to the main room. We still have a few people joining from the breakout session. And okay, so back to our joint conversation here with together with Jakarta. Rudy, what can you pick up, or can you ask like change places with somebody from your end who would like to raise some of their like pressing questions that they've been thinking about right now? So I should repeat? Okay, so Rudy, could you bring up, or somebody who wants to share their urgent question that they would like to raise right now?
Okay. Can we start?
Yes.
Okay. Here is my friend Khairul Saleh, would like to resume what we are talking about, and he is representing us.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning and good afternoon from here.
Good afternoon.
And my name is Khairul Saleh. I would like to share some thoughts from here from Jakarta. So we learn a lot from this this conference, and like in terms like in Indonesian perspective, yeah, we learn about the eco camp, how to engage the young people, to understand, to also giving a contribution for the environmental and climate change. And also we learn from our colleagues that there is a local regulation that supporting to protect the forest in Indonesia, like from the from the Hindu college. So is we learn that this kind of the local knowledge can also supporting the protect the forest based on the religious perspective. And as the information in Indonesia perspective, we since 2015 we already established, we call it interfaith dialogue forum, involve the six different religious groups. We call Indonesia the Siaga Bumi. So this already established the group. So we already like this kind of platform, and we will doing more how this dialogue forum can contribute more for supporting the for the climate change and also for addressing the crisis on the biodiversity. So yeah, as mentioned by Pak Hayu, this dialogue forum also involving the establishment of the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative in Indonesia. So that's from our Jakarta perspective. So we already have a potential for interfaith dialect forum, and we have a question here after this conference. What can we want to know from the SIDA, and what is there any further activities, any plan, so we can then discussing further what we can do here in collaboration with SIDA for addressing the crisis on climate and also the biodiversity loss as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That is a good question, and something that I would encourage. I mean, since there are SIDA partners active both in the respective hubs, and also here in this room, of course. What we're doing is with this conference is that we're assembling individuals, but also representatives of different organizations, many of whom are SIDA partner organizations, and doing active work in the field with their respective organizations and partners in developing countries, for example, and doing activities with partner organizations in different contexts. So what I would say is that twofold. We've been talking about this conference as not a single event. We see it as a continuous dialogue, hooking onto or connecting to the conference that we arranged in November on human rights and environment, Nexus. And now looking at the intersection of faith and environment. And we will be continuing to look at these intersections of where different types of issues and perspectives come into play with environment and climate change issues. But another very concrete example that you are raising with the Interfaith Dialogue Forum, I think is inspiring for us to look into. It's also perhaps a call to, for example, the participants here in the room in Sweden, and of course joining us digitally, to look into, okay, so what are my organization's connections and working relationships in Indonesia, and how can my organization look into the Interfaith Dialogue Forum, and what are the conversations going on there, and how does that, and as well as the interfaith rainforest initiative. And I think, as an eye-opener to look at the development landscape in a broader way. I would like to open the floor to anyone in the room here to perhaps, do you have are there any reflections in this room? Like, what are the possibilities for taking this conversation forward with respects to specifically with Indonesia or other types of inspiration that has come along the way? Any reflections? Yeah, one in the back, and I'm going to pass you the mic so that you can be heard. Do we have this camera? Can we use that one to zoom in for her? It might be easier. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you can look towards
that camera
over there.
Okay. Yes, I'm Laura from Save the Children, Sweden. We were.
If possible.
We were talking about, in general, People and Planet conference, and talked about representation in the conference in general, that it's very Europe, Africa, bit Balkan, Middle East, and Indonesia representation. But where is, for example, China in the picture, and the States? Especially, well, the States have a very influential evangelical Christian community connected also to the economy. And China is maybe less the symbol of religion for us, but they have a lot. And as far as I've understood also, they have quite a lot of evangelical small things going on, which are very big in the context there in numbers. So that's something that we talked about. And then we also talked a bit about these examples of very concrete actions that, like Indonesia, we had feeling we don't know exactly what is going on there in concrete actions. And Tanzania one was very interesting as an example. Was it something else? No?
Thank you.
Sorry. This. I asked Matthias because I wondered about his presentation, Faith for Earth, if they have any representatives from China in that movement, and he said no. So that's kind of interesting from a global political point of view.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, Paula, you also had a remark or a reflection?
Yes, it's something that I've thought about as a person when I go shopping for food. And I know a lot of people here in Sweden.
Actually, could you stand up? Oh, okay, there you go.
What?
No, that's fine.
Yes?
That's fine.
Are concerned about palm oil. And we have questions. How is palm oil grown? How is it certified? Is it okay if it's eco-friendly certified? And we lack a lot of information and awareness. And we understand also this is economical issue also. But I think it would be good if some organizations here in Sweden, in Europe, could take upon themselves to convey and to tell us more facts. And also maybe to contribute to the economy in Indonesia and Malaysia to replace forests of palm oil to something else. To focus more just palm oil.
Okay.
I would like that.
All right. Anna, you also had a remark?
I just wanted to comment on that because I think it would be, because I followed your development of the conferences, and I think it's actually a brilliant idea to follow one specific thing globally, and because the issues that we've been talking about are so complex, but if we could connect them to one product or one item that is actually really relevant and reflects the story, I think that would be a brilliant way to connect us.
Okay.
And that kind of also what I was originally going to say. I agree very much with. I felt with. I think it was Sandra who said it in her panel reflections. She said, "Oh, your language is perfect for dealing with these issues." I have the same feeling that sometimes you just feel like, "Oh, this is so right." It's not. It's not. For me, it's not like different faiths. But it's more a matter of, oh, you're able to deal with the complexity of life and handling complexity and uncertainty. We need that. That's so important in transformation. So, but I'm a nerd on that issue, so I would like to nerd down completely in that. But if we do it together through palm oil, I think it would be interesting for everybody.
Okay, so an upcoming palm oil conference, I hear.
Palm oil and faith.
Palm oil and faith. I'm gonna just say something briefly, but my reflection on this is that, as we say, we have we have time for only so much in the scope of even of 3 days, which is to some extent it's a long conference and a long commitment for people to take time out to join. But in another sense, it is of course too little time. There's never enough time to dig even deeper and deeper. And that's what we, of course, want to encourage you to do, in the sense of that this is not the beginning or the end. This is perhaps a catalyst. And what I want to say as well is to pitch the tool of actually using this in your evaluation of this this conference as well, that you comment on with perhaps some feedback or ideas about the next step, what you would like to see from SIDA to take initiative and do.
Yes. First of all, it's a privilege to learn from Jakarta, so I'm happy that they're with us. And hello to you guys. And my question is almost directly to them. We have talked here about that we should work together, faith-based organizations and conservation organizations, and I think that we have agreed on the common ground, we've agreed on that we should work together, but we have not talked about the how. So I'm interested in, how do you guys work there in reality? Do you have a toolkit? I'm interested in toolkits. And if there is a toolkit, is it possible to share? So that's my question to them.
Thank you. And I would like to get a response from Jakarta, perhaps, on that issue. Should I stand here? You talked yesterday about learning materials that you are co-producing together for faith-based organizations, as I understand it, to like include material for learning and teaching. Is there are there thoughts or already experiences on this type of toolkit that's being mentioned?
Is that for us in Jakarta?
Yes.
Yeah, I just sent yesterday to Torah what we already produced here, actually mostly with Islamic perspective, on the models regarding there are implementation of the Islamic ethics or fatwa on prohibiting of burning land and fire, as well to trade the wildlife. There are some fatwa. There are 7 fatwas that already released by Islamic Council, Indonesian Islamic Council of Ulama. We're talking about the Muslim. and I sent it to
Sorry, you're cutting out.
the tools,
Sorry,
material
Rudy.
tools keep some in Bahasa.
Sorry, could you
but
repeat?
the edX you can find, yes.
Could you repeat? You sent to Torah. You said. Could you just repeat that because you were cutting out?
Yes. I sent the link to Torah as the link for environmental and conservation publication. I will repeat it again. So you can access that we have already in Center for Islamic Studies. Not only for Center for Islamic Studies, there are some resources have been produced by other big NGOs, Muslim NGOs in Jakarta, such as Muhammadiyah, NU as well. As far as I understand, the sermon also produced by Christian group, Christian association in Indonesia nationally, and we are willing also to collect some information from our colleagues here if they have information, so we can share it together with you.
Thank you.
Regarding Siaga Bumi, the forum is only started and as a forum, so it is a forum for dialogue. So we have only one. We don't have any organization fixed for that, but we are moved together between that with a collaborative program such as the Eko Rumah Ibadah. Eko Rumah Ibadah means the Eco House of Worship. That is why we have a program called Eco Masjid, the Green Masjid. We have we got Green Mosque, we have Green Ramadan, we have got Green Biara, Green Church, and Green Temples, etc., etc. All
Det är någon som inte är mutad.
working in their group and their people.
Yeah, just want to add from Pak Fahrudin regarding the fatwa from Indonesian Council of Ulama on 4/9/2000.
Sorry, you're cutting out there again. I'm not sure if it's a network connection issue or if it's a sound audio.
Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So
No.
yeah, we'll need you to speak directly to the monitor or to the computer microphone. Yeah, that's great. I think that'll be better.
Mike.
And then we'll mute everybody else.
Is better now? Or?
Yeah, that's much better sound-wise.
Yeah, in terms of how to use the fatwa in supporting the endangered species conservation, because this fatwa is clearly mentioned how to protect the rhino, tigers, elephants, and orangutan through the Islamic perspective. So we, the UNAS and also the Indonesian Council of Ulama, so working together, including with WF, so we and rhino habitat. So how we can, it is one of the action how we involve the local ulama to support to spreading the Islamic perspective to protect the endangered species is still ongoing project at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, and that's I think that's an example of a very concrete action that is possible to do, which Thomas or Matthias brought up as well. When it comes to organized faith groups and organized religion, using these fatwas as a possibility to communicate and have influence on personal as well as community behaviors and actions in every day. And this could be a very interesting example to follow, and for us here as well to know more about how can we influence individuals as well as communities through our faith organizations. So I think one idea that I got from your question or comment is that in the same way that we have now, we see very positive and concrete examples of interfaith dialogue, interfaith initiatives. I think it's interesting to connect that and to like have inter-organizational, inter-exchange between the faith-based and the non-faith-based organizations in different fora, and we've had some knowledge shared from here in terms of how the interfaith dialogues happen in the international multilateral contexts with the COP 25, etc., and the upcoming ones as well. And what are the possibilities for faith organizations to and civil society, other civil society organizations to collaborate in their local or national context, and as well as, of course, regional, when it comes to the nationally determined contributions in the Paris Agreement, and so on. So I think this is probably in the making. There's examples that we need to now like go in and Google or talk to each other about. What has your organization done already? What are you aiming for? Can you on a personal, like if you're a project manager or if you're a decision maker within your organization, how can you include new perspectives and new collaborations and partnerships in the work going forward? I think that's a interesting and worthwhile like organizing strategy as well. So I want to open the floor kind of vice versa again. If there are questions that you discussed in your small groups that you would like to bring to this conversation in the twinning context, is there like outstanding questions or comments that you would like to make, either from Jakarta or from here to Jakarta? Yes. So the microphone, please, or just pass it up to the corner.
My comment is actually on one of our suggestions. And I would also like to hear from my colleagues in Jakarta, because talking about the example of palm oil, I think it's really, really good to have a concrete work. But I think on our side, it also has to do with consumer power and production power, and that people in the production part are actually at risk. So I see the dilemma of, or not the dilemma, but as you had another meeting on also human rights, and the whole issue of business and human rights, faith perspective. Because working on those issues, we really need to protect the people who are at the ground. So just to remind ourselves, because it's actually really dangerous to be an environment activist, and we want to encourage that, but we should also think about how we protect those people.
Right. That's a very, very good point, and I think perhaps this could be a question to Jakarta as well. currently have like information, or I know, for example, like in the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative, and also your collaboration with and contact with the indigenous peoples organizing organization called AMAN. Like, is there a close contact and collaboration there when it comes to protection of environment defenders and human rights defenders that you have knowledge of or examples from?
Okay. We invited Aman last before, and the Aman willing to attend, but they said um, they have a meeting, big meeting in Eastern Indonesia, so they couldn't come, and no one representative can come. We are quite close enough with Aman. And at the IRI declaration, Aman was represented, and they were happy and bring some of the indigenous people. And as you know, they are very important because they are mostly owner and some land and land and forest in Indonesia is still intact. And we are willing to work with them in order not to lab them, because in terms of indigenous, we are in Indonesia all indigenous people. We don't have within the people who outside and inside. For example, I am also Malay indigenous people, but and because I'm living in the city, I'm not working in the forest. But people like Aman, they have organization that relatively have their own land right, that also being appreciated by the government, but they need help to implement how to protect their land. Yep. So during the IRI declaration, we are also support these kind of issues, because Aman has already starting on their way to how to get their right by constitution. Yep. So that is why we are encourage them to support in order to find that ways, and we are also constitutionally have to support because we are not only as indigenous, but we are as nation. Right. So we are now find a way to work together. How we can work hand in hand with indigenous people. And university, like me, is also initiating some local wisdom or indigenous wisdom that we can learn from them, and to explore how we then put together this in the framework of modern and scientific appreciation, how this can become policy empowerment within to bring that academically to the policy making, so it will be legitimately approved or appreciate recognized by the government.
Yeah, no, and that's that sounds like also a very fruitful partnership, and something that is concrete on the national level, because indeed there are these land rights issues and tenure issues that are being brought up in a constitutional framework, in a legal framework, and that is true for Indonesia as well as many other countries on several continents. I know in Africa as well as in southern Central America. what is I find it interesting, and maybe you actually touched upon this earlier with your first question, is when you asked how do we go forward from here, and what is the role of SIDA or also of the organizations here. What would you say actually? What would you suggest from a Indonesian perspective? What are the what could be a relevant and fruitful role for a Swedish organization, which is either a civil society organization working in development cooperation, or a faith-based organization that is also actively working in development cooperation? We know, of course, a lot from our end of that work, but how would you see it, and how do you see it now when it comes to what could the role be of Swedish actors in a collaboration with Indonesia, if we take that as an example?
Filling the gap.
Yeah.
I would like to say that we should understand each other first, and setting another dialogues with kind of issues in filling the gaps. Something that we should sit together like this, even in a distance, or um, I would like to say that you if you want to collaborate with us, you should understand that you are and we are not going to have another wheel to digging. So we are not from the start. We are already have this, and feeling that gap. Perhaps we can find out the way how we are more rapidly or more massive in this kind of action, either that grassroots action, or if we were talking about bilateral action between this SIDA and, for example, Indonesia.
Right.
We need to mapping of that.
Yeah, just to add from the Indonesian Rainforest Initiative, that we are planning to make like a guidance books from each religions. Yeah, yeah, we have already some, like from Islamic, we have fatwa, we have the description books, explanation about the fatwa, and also this guidance books how to engage from all the religious perspective people to support on the climate issue, and also the biodiversity loss issues. That we are planning in the area planning, IRI planning to develop in the near future. So we don't know if maybe some of you can support on this, because this is quite important for us, how we can spreading the religious perspective to reach as much as people, including the local people, the understanding how they can supporting the climate change and also environmental from the religious perspective.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that we've, in some senses or in some regards, we have started, as we've mentioned many times, like opening some eyes and new. Broadening the understanding of the development cooperation framework by looking at faith organizations on both ends. So I think that now that we've had a twinning between Indonesia and Sweden, there is, I think, a heightened interest, and when you talk about mapping, there's a heightened interest in looking at Indonesia and the both national and perhaps also regional realities, and that goes for myself as well. I find this conversation to be really really inspiring and fruitful, and I think what can what we have done also on a concrete level for those who are not aware, just in this partnership that we have had, and then this planning conversation that we've had with Dr. Rudy, you know, we've actually done some capacity building here. We're learning together, and now there is increased capacity both for us here in Sweden as well as for you in Indonesia and Jakarta to go into this current crisis. You're shifting over, and we're also shifting over to you know, if not 100%, then a lot more of digital interaction. So how can we do our respective works in our national contexts with more digital interaction, and how can we continue to keep each other in the loop with the help of digital tools? And this is a in some regards a premature statement from my part, but we are starting to talk about having a digital online capacity building workshop when it comes to having more digital conferences or digital meetings across borders and across the world, and also perhaps within organizations or between partners in development cooperation and relationships. So that will be maybe coming up in the coming month. We can hope for that and work for that. And that can also be one more further step in our learning together. So looking at the time, I'm conscious now that we have about 5 minutes left to open up for any further like reflections or questions or even initiatives. If someone has something that they've been you know, really eager to bring up as a suggestion or an initiative, that's also possible. Because there's a hand up in the digital space. I will definitely allow you in. Chantal, is it?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, hear perfectly.
Nice to meet everybody. It's great to participate here. I've been working closely with the Indonesia Hub too. I run a new program at WWF called the Beliefs and Values Program, and was formerly with the Alliance of Religions and Conservation for 9 years. So we've been actively bringing religious and conservation partners together for many years. And I just wanted to mention, in addition to working with the Indonesia team on developing all these amazing toolkits for Muslim leaders and communities, we're also in development toolkits with Buddhist leaders and Christian leaders through a developing partnership with the Vatican, and also with Hindu communities in India. And I wanted to also mention that with my colleague Alison Prout, we are with the International Center Network for Conservation and Religion, which is something that WWF and ARC are supporting. We're developing, we're going to launch in the next few months a web portal, which we're hoping will be like a one-stop shop online resource for everything to do with religion and conservation. So that I hope will help this community kind of, can help direct people to one resource where there'll be toolkits and case studies and active connections and researchers, and a place where everybody can kind of go to, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel or try to figure out where to go for these amazing resources and connections. So as a way to catalyze new partnerships between faith and environment actors, and to have all the information you might need to start a partnership or to manage a partnership or to share your information. So I just wanted to let people know about that, and I'm really happy for anyone to follow up with me separately.
Fantastic. Could you perhaps both share, like, if there's a link to either to your contact or also where that information will be posted? I understand that it's not complete right now, but
Yeah, I
where
can put my
will we
email
find
for
it?
now,
Yeah,
and if you'd like to.
and also if we could get some sort of link that we can post up onto the Padlet when we have the Padlet up and running again.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. Okay, so any further comment from either location or from any other participant?
Yeah, is our colleague from private sector will share any initiative.
Thank you, and just pull the computer closer to you, perhaps, and speak directly to the laptop.
Hi, Ola.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. To be honest, that this is very first time for me, for us as a private sectors involved in this discussion. So for me, from my perspective, this is a very interesting stuff because we never realized before that um, uh, using a religion approach, we can also raise the awareness or educate the people surrounding our concessions, either in Sumatra or Kalimantan, to support uh, uh, biodiversity conservations and climate issues. So we've been talking about how this group, I mean religion leaders here in Indonesia can support the awareness program. Earlier this morning, I myself has informed about our initiatives to support government in protecting natural forests and to handle climate issues in Indonesia from the private perspective. But as we are aware here that the challenge to protect natural forests is still a lot, yeah. I mean, still a lot, and very complicated.
Yep.
So we've been discussing earlier that probably like business as usual, such as conducting socialization or doing awareness using I mean the common approach, such as sending expert to meet local people. It is so far is I mean the result is not satisfaction. Probably this I mean using a religion leader in the region can support us as well in protecting natural forests within our concession through a different approach. Yeah. So this I mean that this approach very promising to me.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would, because am I correct that you were part of that presentation that actually talked about, amongst other things, about the palm oil production and the regulations that are in place for having a conservation mindset and awareness as well. Is that right? This morning.
Yeah, but myself is representing from the pulp and paper companies.
Okay.
But I think that our colleagues in oil palm plantation or other land-based industries facing the same situation.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what would be really interesting is if we could also from this hub in Härnösand and in Sweden, if we can get like also like a link for more information or something. I think it's really inspiring also to see that, and it's something that we haven't done on our end, to include more of the private sector and the business side and the corporations to understand and to have that dialogue. I think that's that could also be an interesting further development, to actually have these multi perspectives and include the businesses that in some cases are very much both seen as and also in some cases clearly being the perpetrators of human rights and also environmental violations, but in some other cases perhaps really also trying to do something good for how we can combine the social and economic sustainability with environmental sustainability and awareness of these different aspects. So I think if we can also have any type of information or just update, perhaps if there's a continued dialogue between you now in Indonesia, that would be very interesting to follow. So we'd be grateful to take part of that. I am in the interest of sustaining ourselves and each other, I would like to round off here and to send us from our end into to Jakarta to send a great amount of appreciation for staying on so late. It's 6 p.m. your time, and we are just stepping into lunch here at noon. And we're very grateful to have you with us. And I want to say one final thing to our friends in Indonesia as well, is that after we have lunch in our time zone now, we will be going into a final concluding session and concluding and closing sessions. And you are more than welcome to join us in that online. And we do, of course, not expect for you to take all of your evening time to do that, but we are very happy to have you join us if you're able. And if you're not able to join us live this evening for you, then there will be a recorded stream also available to you to watch afterwards. So I am very pleased that we've had this opportunity to get to know each other a bit better, to share perspectives and experiences and also contacts, and we will continue that going forward. And an extra special thanks to Rudy and your team for this fruitful collaboration. So now we're breaking off into dinner time and to lunch time. Thank you so much for this.
See you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Okay.
Och